Starting with the Arbiter Paragon, the feat Heavy Sun now actually gets you the additional stacks of Judgment, but it was changed to give you Radiant Judgment instead of the Burning Judgment that it was before. Also, more importantly, Searing Light's radius was increased.
Listen up, the soap you shower with?
Instead of 2 feet, so that makes it a lot wider than before. Instead of a straight line, it's a little bit more of a cone, but not quite as wide as your normal cone. So it's definitely a lot nicer than before. It gives us a little bit more AoE that we were missing. Is it enough? I don't know, but it's something. And like I mentioned, Bastion of Health in Arbiter had its divinity cost increased to 380 instead of the 80 it was before. Now that is a huge increase and completely unnecessary in my opinion, because if your team is at the point where you need that clutch heal to stay alive, you probably don't have the divinity to spend on that in the first place. However, there was a problem where arbiters could heal even more than devouts, because they have this feat here that gives you 20% more healing, which does not belong in this paragon, and by the way, it's still here. It wasn't really just this feat that allowed that to happen. I mean, the majority of people who healed with arbiter didn't even use it. It was the frequency that you could use Bastion. So I understand giving it a higher divinity cost, but I think that the increase was too much. Changed a couple weeks ago, the At-Will Conflagrate generates 2 stacks of the Radiant Judgment per use instead of 1 stack. It is the only At-Will that generates 2 stacks at once. And now, Mendicant's Judgment. This is the one that was super good before that was nerfed. It grants stacks of Burning Judgment instead of the Radiant Judgment that it was before. It no longer grants Judgment when you heal yourself. It no longer grants Judgment when the healed target's health is already full. So basically, you're just limited to getting stacks whenever you heal your party. So just by that, I would say that neither of these feats are useful for me as a DPS cleric in this middle tier. I don't think either of them are helpful at this point. The Scales of Judgment tooltip was updated, but they updated it with a typo in it, so I feel like I have to point that out. It says, your powers now cast more divinity instead of cost. Good job! Time for the general cleric stuff. Channeling Divinity regenerates significantly more divinity out of combat, and the divinity cost of Daunting Light for the Devout Paragon only has been reduced to 100 instead of 180. It's still 180 if you're playing Arbiter. As you can see here, it's still 180. The divinity regeneration flat rate outside of combat has been increased slightly. Praise the cleric gods! It's still not that noticeable though. And also they fixed Sacred Flame to not deal 0 damage. Okay, so switching over to Devout, Intercession's cooldown was reduced to 24 seconds instead of 30. The feat that went with this power before it was Intercession has been changed to Savior's Steps, which allows you to move while channeling Astral Shield. The icons are now displayed correctly, yay! And more recently, Primed Divinity increases your divinity regained per tick by 50% instead of the 33% that it was before, after you channel divinity for 5 seconds, which is 1 second lower than before. It used to be 6 seconds. The feat Repeated Blessings now properly causes Bastion of Health to extend the duration of Healing Word. Wasn't working properly before. And Sunburst now properly has a target cap of 15 instead of 5. So that means you can hit more stuff with it. Alright guys, that's it for Cleric. On to